Hello, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining. We will soon begin this webinar. Going to give 5 minutes for all of our guests to join before we reveal our panelists and get into the webinar. Thanks again for making time. For those who are joining, we're just giving a couple of minutes for all of our attendees to join before starting the webinar. Thank you for making the time and being with us here today. Okay. We'll start now. Hi, thank you for making time. I'm Aqsa Taylor, Chief Research Officer at SACR, and really excited to host our panel today, our live panel with security leaders on the convergence of cloud security and SOC, a topic and theme that we've been tracking internally with our research on emerging trends and technologies and speaking to a lot of security leaders. And now we want to hear and bring this debate directly to the security leaders live in front of you to ask them, does the convergence make sense? Is it important to make sense? And if it should, then what is the right approach to it? What are the things and bottlenecks to avoid? And how do we see this in practice? And if it shouldn't, then how do we still address the silos between SOC teams and cloud security teams, having that context with alerts? Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panelists. We have joining with joining with us security leaders from different companies. So I'm going to give a minute for them to join me on the stage. Hi, Puneet. We'll start
Yeah,
with Puneet is a CISO at Pomelo Care. He is very well versed with the needs and requirements for healthcare industry, and he has a lot of experience building hands-on security processes for large organizations. It's a privilege to have you here, Puneet, and I'll let you introduce yourself in depth.
thank you, Aksa. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Puneet Tappiyal. I'm currently the CISO at Pomelo Care. It's a digital healthcare company focused on pregnancy and newborn care. Prior to this, few other CISO roles, at Headspace, which is a meditation app and a mental health care company. Um, but my roots are in software engineering, several years at Yahoo and Oracle. I'm very, very excited to be here. It's an excellent topic, Aksa, very relevant to us. So looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Puneet, for being with us here. I'll now ask our second guest to join me on the stage for this webinar. Hey, Devon, thank you so much for being here. So our second guest today is Devon Rollins. He has a lot of security experience with active SOC operations, threat modeling, response, incident response, and all of that. I will let him introduce in detail, but he is a security leader at Morgan Stanley. We're very thankful for you making this time, Devon, and I'll let you introduce yourself in detail.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aqsa. And I just want to take a moment to thank SACR for putting this type of forum together. I think when security leaders can come together and talk about strategy, it's a good day for all of us because this is a team sport for sure. By way of introductions, my name is Devon Rollins. I am a managing director and global head of security operations and incident response at Morgan Stanley. I recently joined Morgan Stanley just 8 months ago, where prior to that, I was divisional information security officer for enterprise data and machine learning at Capital One. Also held responsibilities and positions in cyber engineering and in cyber intelligence at the helm of both of those organizations to lead us through our ability to both detect, respond, and neutralize threats before they could disrupt trust. Prior to joining Capital One, I served as a consultant and I've been an engineer at MITRE for a number of years, working with the FBI on complex cybercrime investigations. So, this is a space that I have studied for a very long time, is a space that I continue to learn from many others in, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Awesome. This is SOC security. All of this you have not just organized the processes for as a security leader, but you've hands-on worked on it with your background. So super excited to hear your perspectives. I'd now like to welcome our third guest and third and final guest for our panel discussion. Alfonso, or goes by Al. Alfonso comes with security leader experience. He's a security leader at Prudential Financial. He comes with a lot of GRC experience. So we get to hear perspective from governance, risk, audit, compliance perspective as well. He brings a unique character to this discussion. I am so excited and thrilled that you've decided to join us today, Al, and thank you for making the time. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Aqsa, and hello, Devin and Punit. Really appreciate the opportunity to have a lively conversation. As security leaders, obviously, we take our work seriously. I've been working in financial services and now insurance for about the last 20 some odd years. Uh, Various leadership roles, especially internationally and domestically. And it's a wonderful experience to learn about, how to build trust with our business partners and, bring forth, technical and sometimes some challenging topics into some simple distilled, points that business can translate into actionable responses. So, on a personal note, my wife and I live in New Jersey, and we enjoy traveling and culture. And I'm drawn to scuba diving, horology, history, and art. So, look forward to a lively discussion with the rest of our panelists.
Love it, love it. Thank you so much, Al, Puneet, and Devon for joining me today. I'm also in East Coast this morning, enjoying Winterland and White Christmas. Definitely appreciate that from the sunny California weather that I'm usually in. Okay, to begin with, Al, you mentioned about trust. So I'm going to start with a small, light-hearted trust question, but not from a security perspective, maybe more from social media and reach outs. All of you are top security leaders. That means you get reached out almost all the time from vendors, from maybe research teams, and everyone in the cybersecurity industry who wants to get your attention. Maybe tell us one thing that works for you when someone reaches out to you, something that you appreciate, something that you like learning about, and one thing that doesn't work with you. One thing that maybe sales teams do that kind of doesn't hit the mark and you want to just block them or not respond. So off to maybe let's start with Puneet.
Well, that's a great question. Yes, of course, all of us sometimes feel a little bogged down with the numerous emails landing in our inboxes. And so, what works for me, I would say, the content that's appealing, that's not fluffy and it's to the point, those kind of emails really work for me. I may not have time to review all emails, but if something is relevant to what I'm working on, what my focus is, I definitely go and check it out. So that kind of works for me. What bugs me? Oh my God. Like there's so many things. But one thing in particular, which I feel like is increasing by the day, it's probably not a good behavior, is some folks adding meetings to my calendar without checking with me. Like the vendors simply add the meetings, so it kind of clutters my calendar. I don't like declining either to give them like a signal that I've read through their thing, but random meeting showing up in my calendar is something not a good behavior from the vendor side. Would request any vendors on the call to not do that in the future.
Good lesson learned for people who are in the vendor space. And just FYI for everyone, I did not do that to Puneet. I did not put a random invite. I checked with him and then gave him the invite. Okay, Devon, let's go with you next.
So I'll kick off in a more lighthearted way and say that one of the things I really do enjoy is that if I am spending time with a vendor, my clock is really on measuring the median time to demo. So in SOC, we talk about MTTD, median time to detect. For me, is median time to demo. The quicker we can get to actually seeing the solution, the product, understand the value proposition live, it gives me some necessary context to see how that fits and,
Yeah.
and is appropriate for the environment and ecosystem in which I'm charged to protect. So I think that when organizations and teams lead with the demo, definitely chef's kiss for that part of the experience. Okay, so the thing I am not fond of, and look, I believe in the power of amplification, and so I am going to plus one to Paneet. Look, it is a new tactic that I've seen used, and um, it is challenging because again, I never get mad at someone for doing their jobs. I recognize that people are incentivized
Yeah.
and need time with us to understand and validate if the solution they're building actually has merit. Um, and in many cases, I believe that people are positively intended and that they believe they have an answer to a key problem, an acute problem that we have. But I would just plus one to Paneet's argument that this is particularly difficult and absolutely ends up being part of the conversation that circulates amongst us as leaders if we see
Mhm.
that type of behavior. So really want to continue to amplify that messaging.
Love it. I like your MTTD. And by the way, to echo as an analyst, we also value that because we take so many briefings in a day. And if we only look at deck and produce content, then we'll be same as ChatGPT looking at marketing messages. So we really value the actual product demo. So MTTD, I'm going to use MTTD. I'm going to use that next time.
There you go.
Okay, Al, over to you.
I would absolutely plus one to Devin. You know, the sooner you can get to the meat of why we're here and is it a good fit, it just really, makes things productive. And if it's a good fit, hey, do we have the right people, on this call? And otherwise, we can very quickly have a 5-minute overview and hey, we need to bring in some other folks that would probably be, beneficial to have on this conversation. So rather than wasting everybody's time. And on the negative side, some folks, I don't know quite how maybe our phone numbers are posted in various places, but they'll start calling directly. And it's just challenging because you don't have the context of why they're necessarily calling. They're asking for some time and you just don't know if it's a good fit. And,
Yeah.
you don't want to be disrespectful. You don't want to be, passe about it. But if I don't know if it's going to be a good fit, I don't want to spend a lot of time taking up your time and mine. So.
Absolutely. I love that because I get that sometimes too. So, no calendar invites without asking, no phone calls, and no lengthy presentations. Just get to the meat, be on point, and that's how you can help security leaders make the most of their time and efficient use of your time as well as a vendor. Thank you very much, all of you. Quick housekeeping options or maybe just some things for the audience to know. In the bottom, you will see a Q&A section. Feel free, this is live webinar, so feel free to ask your questions at any point to any of our speakers. You can use that Q&A option to put your questions in. If you have any technical difficulties or anything else, please use the chat to add your comments. And then throughout the time, we'll also have some polls that we would love for you to engage and give your answers and insight to that we will discuss through the webinar. Now, something for you to maybe use this opportunity to engage with each other, those who have joined us virtually, is answer what's worked for you and what's not worked for you. If you're a vendor, you can answer the same question from a vendor's perspective on how things worked for you when you tried a different tactic versus things that you have learned will not work for you as you grow and become successful. So open question for that. Feel free to engage as we move on with our conversation. And maybe also mention where you're joining today from, what time zone or city or place. Would love to know that as well. Okay, so 2025 is wrapping. We're in December, getting ready for our Christmas holidays. I'm sure this is also a time for not just rest, but also stress because you have, as a security leader, all these responsibilities. You're maintaining your escalation patterns, processes, what to do when things go wrong during holidays, who to assign, and all. So maybe as we wrap this year up, one thing would be good to discuss, and I'll leave this open, whoever wants to start first, is what are the top three trends you've noticed in 2025, whether from security perspective, technical perspective, it could be like technology, AI risk. It could be threat perspective, if you saw any increased maybe phishing, insider threat, whatever else. It could also be operational or business perspective, security budgets, investments, anything in this front. So over to all three of you. What are the top three trends you see wrapping up 2025?
Hey,
Did
I'll,
you?
I'll take a go at this
All
first and
right.
and give the other panelists some time to like really collect the thoughts here. But in terms of like top three trends, I will say the three trends, but not in any particular order. How about that, Aksa?
Yes,
Um,
yes, sounds good.
so one trend that immediately comes to mind is that obviously as organizations work steadfastly to adopt AI, the trend is that we're very quickly changing or accelerating change within the ecosystem. And traditionally, when we're not in the midst of a technological wave, one that is really a true inflection point in human history, we actually see more of a hesitancy to change. And what I'm seeing is organizations feel particularly catalyzed to embrace this technology and to figure out and form fit it to problems that they have. And so we're almost not even maybe thinking through our change management processes, which was more like feels a little bit more like change whiplash for some folks.
Mm,
So that's one trend that I see kind of emerging, and that's obviously going to create with it some degree of risk, but it's also going to create opportunities for experimentation, a ton of innovation, a lot of great outcomes for organizations. So there's a bit of a balancing act there. The second trend that I see is really in the market, and with the year prior when I went to RSA, I remember walking the exhibit hall, and everything was blockchain powered.
mm. Yep,
And this year when I walked the exhibit hall, everything was LLM powered. It's kind of
yep.
amazing how that works. And so I think that there's a there
And the
there's a
machine learning era too, right?
yeah,
So,
is well, yeah, that didn't have nearly as long of a stay as some of the others. But the reality here, I think, is that we're seeing a lot of talk about AI. There's a lot of framing around agentic capabilities, and the reality is, under the hood is probably a lot different.
mm,
And my perspective here is that when AI is paramount to the delivery of a particular outcome or stated product suite, um, what I expect is if the LLM was removed, that the technology itself would not produce any value. And so I see a trend to claim LLMs as part of a part of the kind of solution, even if it's not the best answer for that particular problem, right? So this is a thing that we got to really work through. And then thirdly, I would say on the regulatory front, I work in a regulated industry, and there's just the trend here is really around governance
mm,
and this notion of how I think about my work is like math class. I don't get credit for just having the right answer. You only get full credit if you have the right answer and you show your work.
mm,
And so this is an area where, partnership with our supply chain, our vendor community matters a lot. We can't have these black box solutions and just
mm,
say, hey, we trust the output and outcomes from, this algorithmic system. And we use that to then inform decision making across very critical business processes. That
mhm,
won't work. And so the trend to, the regulators now is to say, hey, we want to make sure that you understand with authoritative kind of testing that both controls work the way they say they do, capabilities work in the way that you intend for them to, and that you can detect drift when that occurs.
mm. Love it. I love your examples too. Math class, MTTDs. I'm taking notes for sure. You're going to see some of this in my upcoming research reports. Thank you very much, Devon. Absolutely. I really echo with that sentiment too on all of your top 3 points, but highlighting the need for transparency as we're moving through this, because even if you do use security platforms, you may not use AI traditionally, naturally, within your environment for coding, development, or any of that. But the platforms you are using for securing these things are starting to use more and more AI. So indirectly, you are exposed to that risk that comes with it, even if you are not natively using it within your environment. Something that we will dive in detail as the conversation goes. Al, I saw you nodding your head, especially on the governance and risk and trust. This is your area. Love to hear what you think.
No, I absolutely, completely echo what Devin mentioned as far as the transparency and building trust back to our partners. We have to be enablers, right? It's very difficult if we just hold up a stop sign every time new
Yes.
innovation is coming down the pipeline, and there is that demand from from the boards, from leadership that we need to look and make sure that we're able to innovate, look at these new capabilities, be them LLMs or folks trying to go into agentic models. And some of the challenges we're seeing is, how do we enable, how do we empower, while at the same time, comply with DORA, comply with NYDFS 500 if you're in those regulated spaces. Likewise, Puneet in HIPAA and high
Yeah,
tech world, it's like we've each got our crosses to bear in terms of proving out the models that we have, and I think Devin, you hit it right on the head. Monitoring for drift to what expected behavior is versus where the actual platform, because it's impossible to explain a model. I mean, short of having developed it, in which case you might know 15% of that model, it's very difficult as a human being to know what the machine is thinking. So really, setting what those boundaries are from a trust and a baseline perspective, and then monitoring against that for drift, I think is an effective way of doing that. And that's something that, we encourage at IAPP and some of these other organizations where I do some work.
absolutely. Drift and compliance. I mean, HIPAA and all of the data that you have to store with it. Puneet would love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, I'll echo everything Devon and Al has said. From a trend standpoint, I work in a highly regulated industry as well. In healthcare, HIPAA is the federal regulation we need to comply with. And 2025 wrapping up has been kind of challenging. The trends, I would probably say, emerged, which concerns us. Number one, this rise of quote unquote shadow AI. We are all familiar with shadow IT, but now we notice pretty much everybody in every team, every department, maybe across every company or every organization is trying the new AI tools coming into the market, mostly on the engineering software development side, but also like my marketing team, my sales team. Every team is trying out some a new AI service that's coming on and not afraid to upload confidential data. So that's been quite a challenge to wrap your arms around from a security and compliance perspective. So mitigating shadow AI would probably be my big focus next year. Um, the second trend I saw was this, attacks targeted towards developer machines rather than, you typically see phishing attacks for anybody and everybody, but we saw NX attack, we saw Shai Hulud. Those are a couple of big ones that came along to target developers and exfiltrate secrets from their laptops. So that's another trend which is kind of concerning because, in general, our engineering folks have many more credentials on their machine than others. So that's the second one, second trend I saw this year. And the third one, I'd say again, on the AI theme, was this rise of vibe coding and the vibe coded apps, both in-house, but as well as what we see being produced outside with quote unquote AI slop, meaning um, it's so easy to build it out, but so difficult to make it production ready and secure. So a lot of security issues in those apps that have come up overnight via vibe coding. So those are two or three trends which I thought was interesting to share from 2025.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, all three of you. So now let's dive deeper into this topic because you've all mentioned AI is taking role, the threat landscape has evolved, and attacks are now increasingly becoming easier to scale because of AI and the training and all of that. Not that there are new types of attacks per se, but at least easier to scale and replicate and use the existing tactics. And with new challenges such as vibe coding, shadow AI, visibility, change management, drift management, compliance in play. Let's talk about specifically cloud security, because all of these get amplified when there is a mix of cloud workloads, ephemeral workloads, and bringing in that entire life cycle, starting from how you're managing your code, how you're running it in production, how you're delivering your services. But then there is an aspect of if something does go wrong, if there is a vulnerability that is exploited, how does that communication between SOC teams and cloud security teams really look in practice? And to give some context for this topic, right, what we see are there are teams that work in silos. AppSec team has a lot of context on the application development, what it's used for, what is the container doing, what is the environment that it's in. They have a lot more context into the layers of the workload and how that workload is being used in a bigger picture. Then you go to the CloudSec teams, they have that posture layer. They know how the workload's working with everything else, identity, posture, runtime, and they are able to stitch things together into an attack path and blast radius should something do get compromised. Then you have the SOC teams. You get all of these alerts in addition to the cloud alerts, the EDR, the NDR, the VPC flow logs, everything flowing to the SOC teams. They may not necessarily have the same context that AppSec and cloud security teams have about the specific alerts that generate from cloud security teams or cloud security applications. So in that case, there is sometimes what we've seen as a lack of context or lack of ownership on who should really remediate these alerts that are originating from cloud. What has your experience been on this topic? How do you see these silos impacting each other, or maybe just a question also for the audience that we will put in our poll right now as we hear your answers. So our first question is, who really manages cloud alerts in your organization? Is it the SOC team? Is it the cloud security team? And while you answer that question, let's hear what our panelists have to say about these silos that exist between different teams in a security organization. I'll start this time with Puneet.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right, Aksa, that it's becoming more and more complex. All organizations are starting to adopt multi-cloud kind of architectures, not just sticking to one of the four big, I would say. Um, they are picking more modern architectures to build applications like containerization and serverless, which for us as security practitioners, it reduces that window of the time we get to detect because those are short-lived ephemeral workloads. Um, and then, because of all of this, I feel like the static threat detection models that we have been very used to are becoming obsolete. We see new kind of attack patterns, which are what they call polymorphic attacks, meaning um, adopting different techniques to kind of get to your data, not just one kind of technique which can be detected statically or by hashes. IAM polymorphism is very commonly used from jumping from OAuth tokens to API keys to short-lived STS tokens. So folks have been adopting, as we and the industry are adopting cloud to bypass the traditional detectors that we have. So that's becoming a huge problem. So we and of course in the cloud, the traditional network has completely disappeared. The perimeter is gone. So we need to kind of take on the new identity-centric kind of monitoring and approach for defense. Um, in healthcare, this is even more important because we have such sensitive PHI in our systems, and there's severe penalties around data breaches. So for us, it's we have to do a much better job with the evolving kind of cloud landscape, continue to build the patient trust in our services. It's a huge challenge, but largely focused on identity-driven, identity-centric kind of defenses and monitoring.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you. Al and Devon, do you have things to add based on your experience and about these silos between CloudSec, AppSec, and SecOps?
You want to go first, Al, and then I'll kick off after you?
Sure, appreciate that. So, I mean, certainly echo what Puneet mentioned, and one word I would throw in there that kind of summarizes maybe some of this is fragmentation. Obviously, we have disparate signals coming from so many different areas. Yes, CloudSec, AppSec, they have their own, tools and telemetry that they're pulling together. The SOC is looking at alerts; they're absolutely overwhelmed. You kind of need a pre-filtering to understand what is normal behavior, whether it's service accounts, whether it's human accounts, or carbon accounts as they're now known. But really trying to stitch that together, understanding what is the cloud strategy that you're going to move forward, and as you're looking to either modernize or adopt. Think about that in advance. How are you going to pull these things together? How are you going to make sure that the exploit assumptions around where shared responsibilities are, where you have opaque service boundaries, and who is actually responsible for, monitoring and, pulling those alerts together into some kind of a narrative that can be actioned on. So obviously a lot to go on the IR side. So I'd hand over to Devin because that's more his area of expertise.
Yeah, I think the addendum I would add to this conversation is really around visibility gaps. And I think if I were to summarize what I've heard, even from the other panelists, and add a couple of my takes there, is like we have that ephemeral gap. So if you think about our traditional security tools, if they're scanning the environment of every 12 to 24 hours, and we have a container or a serverless function that spins up, executes malware and then terminates within 5 minutes, we're not going to have that activity in our logs. So we have to, really address that gap because obviously we have like snapshot visibility, and we need to move into a space where there's more continuous event-driven visibility. The second area that we've all kind of discussed is the non-human identity gap. So, like we as an organization, across, I would say, the industry, all of us have put a lot of effort and energy around visibility into human identities. So, like you have Okta, you have Active Directory. These are things we know really well. Machine identities, service accounts, API keys, service principals, roles, all of this stuff is an area for which we need to build more muscle memory. And so, if you think about just the scale of non-human identities that exist in an organization. I mean, they're 50-to-1 ratio, maybe even more in some instances. So
Yeah,
you can see who logged in, but you often can't see which service account assumes a role
right.
to jump laterally across accounts. And so this is an area that we see being taken advantage of in terms of modern cloud attacks, excuse me. And so the last one I'll call out is that I wanted to add was really the last two I'll add is east-west traffic. So APIs. We do a really good job seeing north-south. But we have shadow APIs in the organization as well. So developers can spin up undocumented API endpoints for testing and
Mhm.
forget to take them down. And we might not have the same set of controls or protections, particularly with the WAF or logging. And so that creates blind spots. Or if you think about like our Kubernetes clusters, the pods that communicate,
Yeah.
we might not have visibility there as well. So this is an area for which we're going to have to address our gaps. And then the last one, which has spawned a new category of offerings, is really on the data context gap. So if
Mm,
you think about it, like most organizations know where their infrastructure is. Like we have like our CSPM tools to help us in that regard. But we don't necessarily always know what's inside of it.
Mm.
So I give you a good example. If you take an alert that comes to our SOC, which might say, there's an S3 bucket that's public. Well, the context of what data is in that S3 bucket matters in terms of how we rate severity. Because if the S3 bucket only has like the weekly lunch menu, right? Like less risky. But if it has, PII or client financial data, obviously that's a
Or
critical risk. And so without that data context, as a security operations center will suffer from alert fatigue, and this is why the spawn of new technologies and platforms in this space are actually quite helpful and help us understand how to prioritize the work that's coming in.
yes, and love all the points that were raised. And if I were to maybe put it in some buckets, I'd say the visibility gaps, fragmented visibility between all these different teams, lack of contextualization, especially when it comes to cloud, is what separates cloud security specific alerts from other types of alerts, maybe EDR, NDR, or other types of alerts that you would see come through to the SOC because of the ephemeral nature of the cloud, how those workloads are being used, and even network in itself, as you mentioned, Devon, is different. Kubernetes pod-to-pod communication versus how you would have traditional network boundaries with traditional firewalls. It's going to be very different in how you isolate or quarantine now in the cloud world. I also love, Puneet, how you highlighted identity as the new perimeter, which is what we echo in our research reports as well, that it's not anymore about just your firewall boundaries or network boundaries, but what really matters also now is the identity context. And Alfonso, as you mentioned, the teams having different tools and platforms and different visibility that they get. At the end of the day, whoever is handling that remediation, if it is the SOC team, then they lose that context that the other teams probably have visibility to because of the platforms that they are using and how they are using those platforms. The runtime aspect of it, the internal workings of that S3 bucket that you think is exposed publicly, but without proper context. Is it an escalation during Christmas? Or is it just something that doesn't impact your organization and takes away precious time from your family? So I think contextualization becomes so important. And let's see where I'd asked a question in the beginning of this topic. When a cloud alert reaches your SOC, who owns it today? And our participants have answered. I'm going to share results right now, and you can see it on your screen. It's almost a 50-50 split. I have 43% saying cloud security team and 57% saying SOC team. This in itself proves that there is this context gap between these two teams. If the SOC team is handling it, it's not 100% of the times because many times the context lies with the cloud team. But if the cloud team is handling it, well, many times they're responsible for proactive security, your configuration, your posture, your runtime visibility, but they're not really responsible for the reactive or the DR platforms, detection and response platforms. So that's why we see the split that you have mentioned, and also as visual from our polling results, that this worlds of cloud security and SOC will see hopefully more and more merging as new platforms and technologies and solutions evolve. My next question on the same front, and I'll start picking maybe each panelist for this. So I'll start with Puneet. What approach have you seen work best when improving collaboration between these teams? Do you have maybe internal I don't want to get too much into organization specific details, but in general, is it manual contextualization where your team specifically add that context for your SOC teams if they're the ones that's handling that? Or is there any automation that you see helping or AI? What do you think is the best approach to address visibility gaps?
Such a great question. Yeah, context is king, I would say. Context for every team to do their job better. That's really important. But I would start by saying having good discipline around shared goals and shared metrics across, let's say, AppSec, CloudSec, SecOps. That's really important to get them together. For example, let's take we say, okay, here our goal is to reduce the MTTR, mean time to remediate, by some X% in next couple of quarters. If that's our goal, can we share all the teams? Can we share and agree on that goal? And if we do, we contextualize it with saying, if we do this, this is going for healthcare, for example, it's going to really improve our protection for patient data. And then every team kind of aligns on it, and that unites the team. I think that is perhaps the best way to improve visibility across these teams and increase collaboration. But that's within the InfoSec kind of teams, right? There's a saying we all love to say that security is everybody's job. So other teams and the company have to participate as well. So in the spirit of that collaboration, there is one aspect that many companies do pay a little bit attention. I certainly do, which is starting the security champions kind of program to make sure every team, every department is able to participate, have a forum to voice over security concerns. And in some ways, it kind of decentralizes security across the organization. And eventually it comes handy when you have to roll out new security initiatives which are more broader across the organization. You will have security champions already where you have great relationships. And that definitely helps break down silos.
I love that CISO hat you're pulling with security champions and have empowering your teammates and bringing collaboration, but also incentivizing that and helping teams feel incentivized to collaborate better and have that contextualization. Love that strategy, Puneet. Thank you for sharing. And I will follow up on that question. So, Al, Puneet just mentioned about how in an ideal world, following these processes, this incentivizing or bringing that contextualization between different teams will help remove and address those silos. I want to ask you a question that's maybe also a little bit more general based on your discussions with peers, other security leaders and organizations. I know CISO communities are pretty tight-knit when you come to decisioning and questions like this. So, in your experience, what is the current state of SOC teams when it comes to already understanding some of this? Do you think we have a long way to go? Do you think we are already there because of platforms and tools that provide that context? Or do you think there is a place where you want those silos? I mean, flipping the question around, right? Maybe there is a time and place where you're like, this is your responsibility, cloud security team, and we don't want to have too many handovers to maintain that ownership from beginning to end. So I'd love to hear what you have to say on that, Al.
No, I think it's a great question, and certainly many ways to look at that same as an opportunity. How do you potentially want to align responsibilities? Is it by playbooks? Do you have clear, delineations of where various teams take leadership roles in terms of responses, where the SOC should be taking a leadership role, especially where there is, incident potential? I think Devin brought up a great point in terms of the context, understanding where, as they say, the keys to the kingdom are, whether it's client data, whether it's regulatory restricted
Menu.
data that you really have to understand, or if it's lower levels of confidential data that you can handle it at a different tier. So I think having those playbooks in place, making sure that we're all speaking from a common language. Hey, what does an incident really mean for us, as opposed to all these events that might be triggered for various privacy reasons and are handled via different channels. So making
Mhm.
sure that there's that clear understanding as far as how you would escalate, and where
Mhm.
necessary bring the right people to the table and say, hey, how should we diagnose this? Who should be taking a leadership role in here, and do we have those playbooks? And in a lot of stances, ready communications to executives, because we want to use a common language with them as far as what's going on. So
Common language, so important, right? Because the context can get lost in communication as well, and not just based on data or facts. So, Devon, would maybe my question to you now is, um, the flip side of the argument is if we have different platforms, it helps them do their specific jobs in the way that they need to. So when it comes to cloud security, maybe the context that they need on blast radius helps them define better posture, better configuration. And when it comes to SOC teams, using AI in the SOC for triaging, prioritization. So my question to you is, if the silos continue to exist without full hands-on transition or contextualization, what I mean is not just the manual process of tagging or labeling, but also maybe just not having the entire blast radius, for example, as a visibility for the SOC team. Does that impact prioritization on the SOC team side? And if the answer I'm assuming is yes, then how do you technically bridge that gap? Not just by manual contextualization, but how do you help with implementing the playbooks, the automation to remove that prioritization gap? So we've addressed the visibility gap, but how do you address
Mm.
the prioritization gap?
But I think a lot of this starts from a shift that needs to happen, which is from point solutions to a platform consolidation.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, I think the era of buying, a separate tool for every problem, like
Mm,
one for containers, one for storage, one for compliance, I think that that's gone.
yeah.
Um, like we as leaders are obviously always contending with tool sprawl.
Mm,
And even if I have a best point solution, I mean, the amount of work and engineering that goes into getting that output to integrate nicely into the rest of the capabilities we have so that that context is availed is a bit challenging. So what we care to do is ensure that our analysts can see a complex attack chain. Like
mm,
that's the work that we're doing. I'm not really interested in just atomic alerts. This is what's contributing to
right.
the alert fatigue that
Mhm,
analysts are contending with today. And so I think it's very much a dated strategy to just care only about best of breed tools. And instead, like particularly in cloud, there's been more of an adoption into like this unified, the CNAP, the cloud native application protection platforms. And I think that that is where
yeah.
you're seeing a lot of convergence. You're seeing these worlds really collide. And, for my teams, like we like the cloud detection and response capabilities, right? Like those,
Mm,
help us to, correlate a bunch of data points across cloud ecosystems in order
mhm,
to tell the story of what might actually be happening in the environment.
mhm,
Whereas like that configuration question or what's true for developers is something that our cloud security team cares deeply about. What's beautiful is that it allows us to shift left and shield right,
love
right?
that.
And that's the game that we're playing right now. And I think that that's the sweet spot that we want to be in because it
Mm-hmm.
gives everyone the capability to use the signals um, and intel from each other's programs to inform outcomes from the other.
Mm. I I want to highlight the CDR, Cloud Detection and Response term that you just used. And we had a question from Baha Haktanir asking, any of you using CDR solutions or doing an old style log ingestion like VPC flow, guard duty, etc. If you don't want to reveal what products or solutions you're using, you don't have to answer it directly, but I will ask a version of this question, which is how much of CDR technology are you interested in learning about or interested in investing in versus you see that as just another way of redoing another existing platform in a new terminology or a new Gartner new term to package and use. But were you the one who said a heart? But maybe I'll ask you that question. No. Oh, maybe it was audience. Never mind. Sorry, it just popped from your side. So, but anyways, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on CDR?
I think it's a good foundation. Obviously, you have to have that as a good, clear understanding of where your boundaries are, where your signals are coming from, helping to build that narrative. I think Devin hit it on the head. If you don't understand your kill chain and where the signals are coming from that could potentially lead to something else, it's a bad day for you. So the better off you are in understanding, what's coming in, how to interpret, and what your playbooks ultimately are going to be for those things. Having a communication plan together and being effective in planning and actually doing those tabletops. I know it sounds
Mm.
painful, but going back and doing them and repeating and making sure that that muscle memory is there, I think it brings a better place to the organization.
Love it, love it. Puneet, I'll have you answer this other question that Mawar Idan asked in our Q&A. When you think about addressing snapshot visibility gaps, because I remember, Davon, I think actually you mentioned this, snapshot visibility gaps from CNAP, would you prefer solving it in an agent or agentless manner? Now, I'll add one more layer to this question because I feel like if you had the option between agent and agentless, you would use agentless. But my question to you is, even with agentless, there is that risk of permissions and all those layers as well. So, what do you find less friction in? Is it really agentless, give the permissions that it needs to have that visibility? Or you prefer, like, you know what, I'm going to use an automation script. So, if I use an automation script, I can deploy agents on my machines. I don't mind. I'm already using an EDR. What is your opinion on that, Puneet?
I don't think I have the expertise to really respond on this. Of course, agent versus script. I probably need to understand a little bit more, Aksa, what you're adding to the question. I'll defer it to Devon. Looks like
Yeah, yeah,
he has
okay.
experience.
Let's Devon, your SOC experience. Let's talk, let's ask you this question.
Okay, so well, I will. I think I want to step back and answer because there was a question about CDR that I think ties into the answer I want to give here, which
Mm,
is to say, there's a couple things I want to know in terms of correlating signals. I want to be able to know that a container has a vulnerability, that that container is exposed to the internet, and that it has a high privilege role, and
mm.
that vulnerability,
Contextualization.
from a context perspective, I'd like to know if that vulnerability allows a lateral move to a production database,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that context gives me an opportunity to really figure out how I prioritize the work that my team goes and solves for.
Yep.
All right, so to the like using that as the angle for the question you posed to Paneet, which he so thoughtfully passed to me. I appreciate it. I believe, look, I like the agentless solutions and platforms that are out there,
Mhm.
mostly from just the speed of adoption
Right,
and the quick work of producing value.
right,
I
right.
mean, every time, and I've seen it a couple places I've been, but every time we've gone down that path, the immediacy in which we're able to both put our teams to purpose, but also produce insights,
Mm-hmm.
literally things that we did not know to be true about the workloads we were running across the ecosystem, like were availed to us, and then it immediately gave us work to go do. So there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, you need to be at the ready to go take action. But it's the
Yep.
very type, these are the very type of actions you want to take to reduce risk across the organization. And the reason that's important is because then we get to brand cyber differently because we're
Mm,
no longer just the call center, right? Like we're actually helping innovation. We're helping to create these paved roads or security pathways where teams or app teams and developer community could take advantage of these solutions, and ensure that we're, allowing them to get to production in a safe and organized manner without
mm.
a lot of friction or interruption to their need to find flow in the work that they're doing.
Love it, love it. And while you were answering that, I loved how you're talking about, hey, yes, the method is important, but let me first start with the prerequisite. It's about getting the remediation fast, getting that contextualization. So I have a question for the audience as well. Where do cloud incidents stall most often? Where do you see as the biggest bottleneck when you're trying to reach that end game or that final stage of your race? Is it remediation? Do you spend more time trying to remediate and finding out the options you have on remediating? Because in my experience, there's not one playbook to remediate. You can quarantine it, you can isolate it, you can block it, you can prevent it, which is different from blocking. Or is it ownership, finding who owns this? I see the service account. Who does it belong to? Is this a token, an NHI, an AI? Like, what is going on? Is it context? Okay, is this critical, not critical? Do I prioritize this? Do I move it up the chain? Love to hear your answers. And while that's going on, let's talk about AI. Because how can we have a panel in 2025 and not talk about AI? We have to talk about AI. AI in SOC, AI in cloud security. Two angles. And now we're talking about this convergence. How mature would you say among all the demos that you've seen, the things that you're hearing, the things that you're reading, how mature, if you were to say in a 1 to 5 scaling, do you think the use of AI in remediating or even triaging alerts in the SOC space, triaging the level one analyst kind of workspace, right? You're looking at all these alerts coming from the cloud security perspective. We're still on the lens of cloud security here. So when the alerts from cloud security come in, how mature do you think these SOC platforms using AI are in today's world to be for you to feel comfortable to give that level of triaging and prioritization to those platforms? And I'll pick Devon. We talked about this, so I knew I should start with you. So please.
Yeah, I'll kick us off and then we'll go from there. But look, this space is heating up very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us have encountered any number of solutions that posit to essentially produce the erasure of like the tier one analysts. I've seen marketing suggesting that we won't need um, that level of analysts in the ecosystem any longer, and that we could turn those personnels over to different bodies of work. Um, look, I think that I am one to say I'm very pragmatic in my approach to cybersecurity. And when I look at SOAR, so Security Orchestration Automated Response, all of us have done really great work in the security orchestration side. It's kind of interesting to me though, like the risk appetite for automated response.
Mm,
And this is with like a very deterministic rules definition on what actions get taken and under which conditions. So the idea that we will immediately pivot to agents who operate autonomously, who have
mm,
memory, who have access to data and tools and turnover decision making,
mm.
to me feels like a significant mental leap, particularly for organizations of
Yeah,
size.
yeah.
So, okay, so take that in the context of also being regulated. So I think that that's a bridge too far too soon.
Mm,
Now, I think that we get there, but we
mhm,
get there following a very phased approach. Hey, can I squeeze all the juice I'm supposed to squeeze out of my sore? Am I using ML to purpose in the ways that I could be to spot anomalies? Do I
mm,
do all the prerequisite work to make sure that I have a data catalog and data provenance and data lineage and data quality and a normalized schema that's being leveraged across the indices that I consume into my SIM? There's a lot of homework to do in order to get this right and position us to be successful when we turn over bodies of work to agents. Now,
mm,
I'm just not one to say that there's a silver bullet in our space. There's a lot of problems that I think agents can solve or AI can solve, or for which LLMs are being appropriately put to purpose. And one of the models I really like is more of a hybrid, whereas like the SOAR platforms and the deterministic workflows that we're accustomed to, we still leverage. And then when there's areas where we need some type of reasoning power, we inject LLMs, and then we flow back into a construct that follows a certain set of patterns that we can ensure are true. I'm a big fan of like the 5 minute win for my
mm,
analysts. I have like a part of my strategy is like literally there's a pillar all about prioritizing analyst joy.
mm,
And part of the 5 minute win is really about how do we put automation to purpose to handle what tends to be like the slog of every tier one analyst, which is getting that context. So if I can automate the entirety of that experience, then
mm,
I've done a huge service to my analysts and I've revered them and put them in a position where they can make smarter, better decisions on behalf
Mm,
of the firm. So this is the area that I'm really concentrating in and really
mhm.
showcasing that our automation, the proof points for which that automation bears value for us, gives us greater degrees of confidence in us turning over more and more of those workloads over to AI agents, but in due time.
Love it. Very practical and realistic answer. Thank you, Devon. Now, I want to be cognizant of a time we're reaching the end, but this conversation has been so lively. I had so many more questions and topics. I could just go on with all three of you. Maybe a part two. Stay tuned to our attendees. So, from the answer, context and remediation have scored high. I'm surprised that no one said ownership as a place where they spend time. So, our last question here for our attendees is. Have cloud security platforms, can your SOC assess cloud exploitability without involving cloud teams? And that will be the last question for you to just maybe go with and think about as you define your cloud strategy and your security strategy. To wrap it up, I want to give a huge round of thanks and applause again to all our panelists, Puneet, Devon, and Al. Your insights have been super helpful to me, as I'm sure is helpful to all of our teams that have joined as well. And I hope that the people who have joined, you can take this back if it was as a vendor on how you're developing your platform to bridge this context and visibility gap between cloud security and SOC, if you are a security leader in understanding practical ways it works and how other security leaders are thinking about this convergence as well. And my last questions to both Al and Puneet is everything that Devon mentioned. Is there anything that you would like to add as we wrap up this topic on the convergence and the role of AI between cloud security and AI SOC?
Yeah, just to kind of complement what Devon said and absolutely echo, and I think fantastic work in getting the SOAR and getting the most we can out of SOAR. But on the AppSec side, I think there's some low-lying fruit and opportunities to have AI give that developer, hey, here's a simple roadmap to address everything that attack surface management is coming up with as vulnerabilities in your source code. Here's an opportunity to kind of redress those API flaws, your secrets, basic tackling and blocking issues that we see in source code to get them better at self-identifying, and over time having the AI help do that analysis and suggest edits for their own code. It's a simple solution that's available today, and that I hope that scales better for the rest of the industry. Puneet, I'm sure you have other thoughts on that.
Well, AI is a game changer, no doubt about it. And it's already, in my opinion, adding a lot of value in risk identification and I would say in risk prioritization as well. But I would echo what Devon said earlier. When it comes to addressing the risk, the remediation, I don't think we are there yet. And I think we are missing a critical step of figuring out how to have more confidence of not having regressions if we do auto remediation. I think that missing step is something which would help the whole industry a whole lot. So all the AI vendors who are looking to build auto remediation kind of features, they should focus a little bit more on giving us more confidence as leaders around not running into regressions because of those auto remediations. So that's my 2 cents on AI.
Love it, love it. Wrapping up on AI. What best way to wrap up 2025 than wrapping up the conversation about around AI? And wrapping up on this whole topic of convergence of cloud security and SOC, I thought we'll come in with debate, but I think we are in conclusion and alike in our thinking that there needs to be more merging of cloud security and SOC for contextualization to address visibility gaps and to help with remediation. Now, is AI in the mix to help with the remediation? That's debatable in where we are right now. However, is there a future for it? Absolutely. I think I'm hearing that there is a phase-wise approach that we can take in helping security teams have more confidence in addressing their incidents with AI in the mix. And the last question that I'd asked was, can your SOC teams assess cloud exploitability without involving cloud teams? It's a resounding no with an 83%. And that concludes our topic, cloud security and SOC. Does the convergence make sense? The answer is clear. Yes, absolutely, especially in today's world. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you next time. Again, I'm Aqsa Taylor from SACR. I'm Chief Research Officer. And make sure you subscribe to our LinkedIn, follow our LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletter to read our research reports on all these emerging trends and topics, and to continue to be involved in security leader discussions. Thank you.